fillers, additives, colorings, all this extra processing, which is done to make something cheap and appealing, is not good for you. We pay a cost for convenience. So you might feel like you save time. You might feel like you save time, you know, by getting cheaper stuff, but it could be taking time from your life. Is That's my point. So let's upgrade the quality of the ingredients that we put on the inside of our bodies, okay? Because it really matters for your health. Good morning. So, a start to your health journey, if you don't have one yet, or a quick change that you and almost anybody can make starting today that's not complicated, is changing the quality of the food ingredients that you use when you cook. I'm a firm believer that this is one of the first things that everybody needs to do. Um, before a lot of things, because here's the thing: we in the United States and probably mostly in the West, we use a lot of processed products. There were times, especially prior to like World War I and II, where people didn't have such availability of processed stuff. And so the ingredients that people used tended to be more whole, so to speak. Okay. So case in point. Now, and understand this too. When I kind of give this kind of breakdown, I want you to understand that I'm not saying, when I'm talking about cooking with better ingredients, some of this stuff is probably still stuff that you'll need to eat in moderation. But I think you got to start somewhere. So I always am a firm believer in having you to go ahead and improve the quality of the ingredients, the foods that you consume first, because you want to do that anyway. Okay. All right. So case in point, vegetable shortening versus like lard or tallow. Okay. I will say personally, I've never cooked with lard, which is pig fat, and I don't, because we don't really do pork like that. At least now we don't. But we have recently bought tallow, which is beef fat. Now, so with shortening, for example, you might use shortening when you make homemade biscuits, which I do like, by the way. But shortening was something that kind of became more popular around and after World War II, if I remember correctly. The oils that are used in shortening were oils that were used to grease, to lubricate machinery and stuff related to the war machine, to equipment used for the war. And so after the war, there was this oil that people had, um, and they didn't know what to do with it. So a couple of changes were made, and that oil began to be marketed for consumption by humans. And it was touted back then as being healthier than animal fats. So animal fats started to gain like a bad reputation, and shortening started to be used in place. Then, of course, fast forward, maybe like 30, 40 years later, or really probably about 10 or 20 years later, people start to get heart attacks and stuff like that because of vegetable oil. Why? Because vegetable oil, is highly processed, hydrogenated, which means trans fat. So people were getting clogged arteries and stuff like that and getting, like I say, heart attacks and strokes and stuff. So my point is, if you're using shortening, and again, I'm not saying that you need to consume a whole lot of animal fat either, but the thing is, the quality of fat, but when you go between the highly processed, you know, vegetable oil and animal fat, like I said, we might opt for tallow more often. But we still more often will use something like coconut oil. But anyway, I digress. My main point is, when it comes to the quality, you want to get something that is as close to natural as possible. The animal fats are just rendered. That means they just kind of get the animal fats off of like the meat, and essentially, you know, like for example, if you were to boil some ribs before you cook them, and then there's some fat on the top, and so you take that fat off and you save that for cooking later. That's like rendering, basically. So my point more so is that it's a much better quality fat. It's a much better quality fat. And believe it or not, animal fat does have some health benefit. Not saying you should eat it a lot, butter, whatever, but it still has some level of health benefit, whereas that shortening, no, man. Another thing. All right, so another one, cheese versus cheese product. Cheese is cheese. Cheese essentially comes from milk that has been churned, and then you take the rennet and all that kind of stuff, and you make cheese, whatever kind of process that is. Cheese product has cheese or dairy in it, but they've also added, vegetable oil and like high fructose corn, no, not corn syrup. I didn't mean to say that. But other kind of like emulsifiers and different kind of things to have the consistency and texture and stuff that it has. All kind of other additives versus it just being cheese. The thing about cheese product is that cheese product is cheaper. It's cheaper. But remember, you get what you pay for. Because it takes more to create the natural product than it does to create the more processed product. But that's kind of the point. Again, you're getting what you pay for. So you don't have all those fillers and things in regular cheese that you do in cheese product. Another one, artificial sweetener versus sugar. Now, I'm not saying that you just need to go get a whole lot of sugar. But what I am saying is that artificial sweetener is highly processed. It has sweet taste, but it is basically it's like a chemical created in a chemistry lab is what it is. And so, sugar will come directly from beets or come from, sugar cane or something like that. But artificial sweeteners, it's like, again, like just a whole chemical process or whatever in a lab that creates that stuff. And those have been associated for sure with other health problems, like being carcinogenic or causing nervous system disorders. And so again, I'm not saying that you consume a lot of sugar, because sugar in and of itself can be bad for you because it's so concentrated, and it can, if you get addicted to it, which sometimes it's easy to because of how much sugar people put in our food, then that in and of itself can cause you to develop diabetes and all kind of other health problems. So you really need to be careful with sugar too. Um, so yeah, so anyhow, oh yeah, and the last example I want to give is kind of a more broad example, but every Christmas, I will go and kind of bake dark chocolate chip cookies. It's kind of one of the things I do. And what ingredients do I use? For chocolate chip cookies, I use some all-purpose flour. I use some whole wheat flour. butter, of course, dark chocolate chips, sugar, is it baking powder, eggs, and I think that's it. I can't remember, but that's it. I looked up a popular chocolate chip cookie, and it had, flour and stuff like that, but it also had um, canola oil, palm oil. Both of those are, vegetable oils that aren't necessarily considered healthy. High fructose corn syrup, which is light sugar, but for for reasons, other reasons, that can actually be even a worse form because of how the fructose in particular acts in the body, and then artificial flavorings. So you have all this extra stuff in there, some of which is added to make it more appealing taste wise, some of which is added for texture, some of which is added for shelf life. Um, and it's just easy to pick up off the. It's a whole lot easier to pick those off of the shelf than it is to make your own. But my point is, again, you get what you pay for, you get what you work for. So you got to understand, like, if you can just change the quality of the ingredients that you buy or the foods that you buy, then that right there is such a huge impact on your health, because you got to understand fillers, additives, colorings, all this extra processing, which is done to make something cheap and appealing, is not good for you. We pay a cost for convenience. So you might feel like you save time. You might feel like you save time, you know, by getting cheaper stuff, but it could be taking time from your life. Is That's my point. So let's upgrade the quality of the ingredients that we put on the inside of our bodies, okay? Because it really matters for your health. Y'all have a good day. If you like this content, you might also be interested in one of my books. Learn how you can take steps literally today to successfully manage, control, and overcome common issues such as high blood pressure, diabetes, and belly fat. It's all about putting power back in your hands to improve your own health. Get your book copy today by the links in the description or by visiting seanmcclennan.com/books. Also, don't forget, hit the like button and subscribe, and join my email list at seanmcclennan.com/subscribe.